Today's lessons address discipleship, following Jesus, considering three words: unity, welcome, and grace. In today's collect, we pray to be joined in unity of spirit, a holy temple acceptable to God. Unity of spirit is worth striving for. Unity, different from uniformity. Unity requires flexibility and determination to honor difference. As we approach our country's 250th birthday and consider our founders striving to form a more perfect union, we are as aware as ever that unity is easier said than achieved. It was ever thus. How human it is to argue about who is right. In the first lesson, we hear two prophets in conversation. Hananiah has just claimed that God would break Babylon's yoke on Judah within 2 years. And Jeremiah counters, recalling prior prophecies that Judah needs to stay under Babylonian rule to survive. While it would be nice if peace were imminent, there's more to endure. The Psalms speak at length about endurance. Psalm 88, which immediately precedes the lovely psalm we read together, Psalm 88, ends in its last line, in darkness and despair. It may be the darkest psalm of the Bible. And yet, in that first verse of Psalm 89, the psalmist stubbornly proclaims God's steadfast love. Your love, O Lord, forever will I sing. Prophets and psalmists call God's children throughout time to cling to God's promises, even in the darkest days, to pray for deliverance from enemies, to persevere in faith. And so does Paul, writing to the Romans about being brought from death into life. Jesus died to atone for human frailty and rose that in new life, we share in God's righteousness. Jesus sent the first disciples to help God's people connect to God, connect to one another in relationship, right relationship with God. A disciple, an apprentice, the same word in Greek means both, pupil, student, apprentice, disciple. A disciple learns through the instruction of another. Disciples learn and then model what Jesus calls us all to embody. God's disciples follow Jesus, connecting in relationship with God. And it all begins with that second word, welcome, receptivity. The one receiving you receives me. The one who welcomes you welcomes me. The one who welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. Receive and welcome. Be both channel and vessel of God's love, God's presence. Receive and welcome are two translations of the one Greek word that can be translated in many flavors. Receive, grasp, welcome, put up with, tolerate, be open to, be approving of. Those can all be translations of the same word, dekamai, in Greek. When Jesus says, welcome me, welcome the one who sent me. All variations of meaning from the same word. To be part of a community is to practice these skills. Receive, grasp, welcome, put up with, tolerate, be open to, be approving of. Receptivity is key to the work of community and family life. Just as we move from positions of being parented to parenting, from being mentored to mentoring, from being led to leading a community, life cycles move us through constant change, learning, growth, development. As disciples, as apprentices, we are both students and teachers, modeling our faith all through our lives. Jesus tells his disciples, receiving a person in the name of, that is, with respect for the position, whether it be God, Jesus, prophet, righteous person, we receive, and in receiving, we learn to model it for others. Jesus talks first to the disciples about being received as he sends them forth. The one who welcomes you welcomes me and welcomes the one who sent me. And there again, there's a movement between extending and receiving. God first extends to us. We receive, and then we go forth and extend, and another receives. The more we participate in this give and take, the richer our lives become. Our hearts belong to God. We get to tune them in, to listen carefully, to hear God drawing us closer to him. All we do with God's help. As Paul points out, to think we can keep sinning willfully and the slate will just be wiped clean is as mistaken as Hananiah's false prophecy. As we have been reminded over the past 2 Sundays at this service at Trinity, baptism isn't a once-and-done endeavor, is it? It's the beginning of a lifelong journey. We die to sin, we rise again to new life, and that cycle after cycle of falling away, repenting, and returning to the Lord is the journey of faith. When we need to turn around, we find subtle or not so subtle indicators. Because of Jesus' sacrifice on our behalf, sin has no dominion over us. We can't help ourselves by ourselves. We need God's help, and God breaks the hold of sin on humanity. God's grace flows through the Word made flesh, dwelling among us. So what is grace? Grace is God's favor, God's beneficence, illuminating our existence. God doesn't punish as we deserve, but allows us to enjoy the privilege of following Jesus. Grace doesn't mean life without suffering or disappointment. By God's grace, we're never defined by our worst moments. By God's grace, we can choose what we obey, as Paul tells us. We can choose righteousness over sin. We can listen and follow divine instructions. We know in our hearts what is right. We can devote our lives to God's interests. We can allow God's reign to govern our decisions. We receive fellow students in the journey as we are received. To be received into a community with hospitality of spirit is to encounter grace. And often, experiences of grace come when we are at our most vulnerable. A friend recently shared this poem by Marilyn Chandler McIntyre. The poem is titled, How to Recognize Grace. It takes you by surprise. It comes in odd packages. It sometimes looks like loss or mistakes. It acts like rain or like a seed. It's both reliable and unpredictable. It's not what you were aiming at or what you thought you deserved. It supplies what you need, not necessarily what you want. It grows you up and lets you be a child. It reminds you you're not in control, and that not being in control is a form of freedom. How do you recognize God's grace? As McIntyre's poem conveys, grace can be full of surprises. It can show up in a season that tests our mettle. The season of comings and goings we're in here at Trinity. We've had 7 deaths touch this community in the past month, including our rector's mother. We are enjoying the gift of a new organ on the way, and so our congregation continues to move. And we continue to enjoy opportunities to embrace the movement of grace as energy ebbs and flows. Following Jesus as both students and role models, we do unity, welcome, and grace pretty well at Trinity. God extends grace to us. We reciprocate with each other as we have received. And in so doing, lives are transformed.